Today we are taking the humble tater.
What's taters, precious?
You know, boil it, mash it, stick it in a stew, and we're going to turn it into vodka. Cheers, guys. How's it going, chasers? I hope you're having a kick-ass week. I'm Jesse and this is Still It. And today, yes today, we are finally making potato vodka. So, no beating around the bush, we're getting straight stuck into this. And the first thing I want to talk about is the selection of potatoes, because this is kind of important. Turns out that potatoes aren't the greatest source of starch on the face of the planet. They're just not that dense with it. So you are going to want to choose the most starch dense potato you can. Now you could get all technical about this and look up all the potatoes that are available to you, figure out, you know, the starch content, the starch percentage, and go from there. But a basic idea is the more floury and fluffy the potato is, the higher they are in starch. So at the very least, you want to go out and find a potato that is sold as a roasting potato, because the roasting potatoes are the ones that get crispy on the outside, fluffy on the middle, they're higher in starch. I'm using Agria potatoes. We're using 20 kilos. This is going to make a 50-litre wash and about 2 litres of 90% vodka. Now, you could peel the potatoes to prepare them, but it turns out that a whole lot of the flavour in potatoes actually comes from the skins. I like flavour, so I'm not going to peel them. Instead, I'm just going to brush them and throw them on into the pot. Any potatoes that are actually nasty, I just biff them. It's not worth keeping them. Things that have small blemishes on them, I just cut the blemishes off and wax the rest into the pot. Once all 20 kilos of potatoes are prepared, I put around about 4 litres of water into the bottom of the pot. I'm not covering the potatoes, I'm just covering the bottom of the pot. Next, it's off out to the shed and we're getting the gas fired up to steam these taters. Pop the lid on and let them cook for around about 45 minutes, making sure that you don't run out of water. I've just checked the spuds and they're nice and tender, I guess you would say. They smash apart relatively easy. So the next job is, of course, smashing these things up. And the reason that I steamed them instead of just straight boiling them was because I've only got this little tool for smashing, which is obviously kind of inadequate. And I figured it would be easier to smash if there wasn't hot freaking liquid everywhere. Once the potatoes are roughly mashed, add in another 8-ish litres of water and get to mixing. I found it easiest to use a big old mash paddle in conjunction with the masher to get the rest of the job done. Now I have 20 kilos of potato. The starch has been gelatinized, so it's going to be accessible to the enzymes once we get that going. And honestly, you could use, you could use bottled enzymes if you wanted to. I'm going to be using barley because I've got some on hand and I feel like this is, I don't know, I feel like this is a recipe where I don't want to take stuff out of a bottle and put it in. I just want to do it the natural way. I hate it when people say that, but in this case, for some reason, it means something to me. So I've got 5.5 kilos of barley sitting down there, and I'm going to add this in very, very, very slowly and do a lot of stirring so we don't get any grain balls, we don't get it all clumping up, and everything is accessible to the liquid so the enzymes can do their job. We're going to be pushing this pot to the limit. Hopefully I can fit it all in. We'll soon find out. Normally, when I'm mashing grain, I just mash straight into mash temperature. Barley is converted so well these days that the idea of a step mash just isn't, in my opinion, necessary. But because we're using potatoes today, we're going to do a pseudo step mash to help to utilize different enzymes in the full enzyme packet that come in the barley. That's why we added cold water earlier on. So right now we're sitting at about 40 degrees Celsius. I'm going to get the gas turned back on, turn it right down low, and slowly bring the temperature of the mash up to 63 degrees Celsius. Once we hit the 63 degrees Celsius, we can pop the lid back on, insulate the pot, and just let it sit for a solid hour. Because we made this with potatoes and not just barley, I decided I wanted to do a starch test to make sure that everything was converted in the mash during that hour. If you want to learn how to do a starch test, click on the video in the top right corner. Once you've passed the starch test, let your wash cool down to 25 degrees Celsius and pinch a little bit of liquid off the top to see your original gravity. You can then pitch your yeast. I'm just using baker's yeast and I'm pitching 3 tablespoons of the stuff. Heaps of yeast. Get the pot covered back up and ferment it, ideally at around about 25 degrees Celsius. If you can temperature control, great. If not, just find a temperate part in your house to keep it in for about a week. This potato mash wash thingy jigger, what's it, has been fermenting for 8 days now, and it's soured just a little bit, which is great. Now the problem is, I'll be honest with you guys, if you're doing this at home, one of the biggest problems you're going to have is trying to separate the solids from the liquid if you don't have a still that can handle distilling on the grain. Now, one tip I will give you guys is you can get one of those mop buckets, you know, the ones with the big levers, and a brew in a bag or even a pillowcase or something. You can scoop the mash into it, pop it in the bucket, squeeze it out, collect it down the bottom, you know, tip the grains out, carry on. I'm not going to be doing that today. Do you know why? Because I'm a dirty cheat. I'm a dirty cheat. And I have a oil jacketed still, so I can just throw everything right on into the pot and I don't have to worry about it. I know this still looks kind of crazy, but in essence it's just running as a simple pot still right now. The only thing I'm utilizing from all of this is the fact that it is oil jacketed, which means I can just throw everything in there without scorching. So it's just a simple pot still down there in the pot. The mash is boiling away, the vapor's coming up through the column, over through the line arm and down into the condenser over here. For those of you that aren't used to this stuff or new to the channel or new to distilling, I'm running this as a stripping run. All I'm doing right now is the first distillation. Like I said, it's a stripping run and we're doing that to collect the low wines. This stuff here, once we're done with it, I'm gonna go and pop it in another still. So give me a little bit of time, I'll get this run out, we'll collect all the low wines up and we'll pop it into the next still. Now we're getting towards the end of the run and people always ask me how far down into the tails I go on a stripping run, and honestly guys, it's up to you. It's basically how much time do you have versus how thrifty you want to be with what's in the pot, what's in the still. I like to go down to at least 20%. I go down to 20% pretty much all the time, and with something like this, because I'm trying to scrounge up as much alcohol as I can to go into the next run, I'm going to go down to, let's say 10% at least, and we'll see where we go from there. Yes, I could be using a parrot, but no, I'm not. I know this is a vodka video, and generally for vodka what you want to do is to distill it to the highest ABV you can, to clean it up as much as you can. But I've been tasting this stuff coming off the spout over here, and I'm actually kind of enjoying the flavor that's in it. There is a really interesting earthy, it's like potato skins, funnily enough, and it's faint, it's not overpowering, and it is not disgusting at all. I actually quite like it. So I am going to run it through 4 plates on my still. So that's 4 bubble plates instead of running it in full reflux. If you don't know the words that I'm talking about, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, I get it. I don't want to get into now because that's another whole 10 minutes of talking, but I'll put some videos up here for you to help understand it. If that doesn't make any sense, ask some questions in the questions down below. I'll make sure to get into the comments after the first day or so that this video has been up and answer as many as I can. There's also a buttload of other people out there in this community that'll help you out in the questions down below. So if you do have a question, feel free to ask. Guys that have been around forever, you know the drill. Be nice. Be nice. So once these low wines have finished collecting out, I'm going to pop them into my other still. And once again, guys, I'm doing this to show you guys multiple different things. You don't have to use different stills like this. You can just use the same still. I'm going to have to proof that down for 2 reasons. One is around the home distilling community, we like to not put anything higher than 40% ABV into the boiler. It's a safety thing. So I'm going to proof it down to at least 40%, but I'm also going to run into a problem with volume. I need enough volume to completely cover the elements in my still, so I'll use just enough water to get above those elements, and then we can get set up for the next run. So we got the still charged up, we added in some filtered water to get above the elements, and now I have run the still for a little while to get all the plates balanced out. I slowly bled off some 4 shots at the very beginning, and now I've adjusted the still to run a little bit faster to start collecting the main chunk of the run. So right now we're collecting heads, soon we're going to be into the hearts and into the money part of the run. Now I understand that there is a whole lot going on here, and to be honest we don't have time to go into exactly how to run, you know, this kind of still. If you do want to know more about that, please guys check out this video up here that talks about how I run my plated still and kind of what's happening within the still. I'll check back in with you when we've got solidly into the hearts. On the pointy end of the still, we're collecting off the spout, and I'm collecting into multiple little jars, and the reason for that is that I want to be able to later on select which parts of the run I keep and which parts I don't. So as they fill up, switch them out, put a new one in, and it just means that once the run's done, then I can go back and select exactly what I want. I can make the cuts the way I want to make the cuts and keep what we want to keep, leave the other stuff out because it just doesn't taste good. And because I know there's people out there that are going to want to know, it's coming off right now. The alchemy is saying 90%, it's probably a touch cold, so maybe 91, 92%, something like that. But a result, I'm happy. We are now far enough into the run where we're starting to hit tails. The ABV is dipping slightly. The taste has gone horrible. Tastes like nasty ass, wet cardboard, wet dog, funky, earthy nastiness that we don't want in the run. But I'm going to keep collecting it because I can save this stuff and whack it into the faints jar and use it again later on. Once I've got this finished, we'll jump on over to the bench, we'll blend it, and we'll have a taste. You know what? Let's taste it next to the tomato paste wash and see how it stacks up. I have spent the last 15 minutes just sort of going through these, having a nice little assessment of each of them basically. This is the beginning of the run and the end of the run. It started out fruity and almost oily smelling, which is quite interesting, but it is super jaggy up the top end here. By this jar it's cleaned up and it is almost identical down to this point here where the tail started coming in. Woo, yeah, down there it is super musty, pungent, wet dog, but a little bit more grassy than that. So we're definitely not going to be keeping this one, we're going to get rid of it. The one that is interesting to me is this. It's heading towards that flavor, but it's not there yet, and it has a lot of potatoiness. It reminds me of the flavors I go looking for in a whiskey, funnily enough. So we're going to get rid of these two. We're definitely keeping these 4, so I'm going to throw those straight in now. And what I like to do when I can't decide on something like this is make a little tincture up. So what I want to do basically is put 4 parts of what I've got, a half part of this, because that's the rough ratio that it'll be in, proof it back down to roughly 40%. Interesting. Okay, I like it, but I don't like it that much. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put half of this in. If you were trying to make a super clean, you know, heading towards a much more neutral flavor profile, you wouldn't want to add things like this. But the beauty of this hobby is you do whatever the hell you want. You make stuff the way you like. I like flavor. I always go looking for flavor. And we're going to proof some of this down and have it next to some TPW. For those of you that don't know, TPW stands for tomato paste wash. It's a vodka that I made a little while ago. Once again, video card up here if I've got any left. My word, I've used a bunch this video. But I thought it would be really interesting to taste them side by side, and I'm sure that you guys at home would be interested as well. The TPW smells like sugar wash. I feel like I could blind test this and tell you that this came from sugar. The potato vodka does not have that, funnily enough. What it does have is an interesting, earthy, potato skin aroma on the nose. I will admit it's probably not everyone's kettle of fish, but I actually quite like it. I'd be really interested to see what we could do with this. I gotta say, the first thing that comes to mind is like a kind of a weird and wacky gin. Like, what does it make me think? What about like a roast lamb gin? I don't know. Like literally rosemary, some lamb fat, and then gin stuff? I don't know. It makes me want to do weird things. Okay, so the biggest difference to me is the mouthfeel. This has a slick but piercing mouthfeel. This has a smooth, almost oily, but very light mouthfeel. When you put this in your mouth, it feels like it soaks into your tongue and kind of attacks your tongue. And when you put this into your mouth, it feels like it coats your tongue, it's velvety on your tongue, but then it sort of evaporates and you feel it more up in your sinuses. I want to talk about a couple of other interesting things about this stuff, but before I do, I need to say a huge, huge thank you to the Patreons. Thank you so much, guys. I don't get to do this stuff without you. I am so freaking lucky in 2020 to be able to mess around with this stuff in my shed, and it's my job. I don't know how I got this lucky, but thank you so much, guys. A huge part of that is because of you Patreons. Thank you. The last thing I wanted to talk about, guys, is efficiency. Potatoes, you would assume, are a really dense source of starch, but, well, I did, I must admit, before I heard about this stuff. Turns out they're really not. So, from 20 kilos of potatoes, and what was it, 5 kilos of grain, I got 2 liters. And that's not horrible, but imagine if that was 25 kilos of grain. That volume would be a lot larger. It's a lot of effort, it's messy, it takes more time than other types of vodka, but it does yield a different result. So if that's what you're into, guys, I gotta say, I really do have to say, this would be a fun one for you guys to try at home. If you have tried it at home, please drop a comment in the comment section down below. Tell me if you got a similar result to what I have here. Tell me if you did it differently. For those that haven't tried it, make sure you go down and check those comments, because you're going to get some cool suggestions and ideas down there as well. I hope you found this interesting. If you did, please guys, give it a thumbs up. That helps me out immensely. If you're not subscribed yet, and yes, you want to chase the craft of home distillation, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below the video as well. Have a kick-ass week, guys. I'll catch you next time. Keep on chasing the craft. See ya.